How do I know people are enslaved to money? Because all of my friends, they make $100 and they spend 110.
Right.
Right? That's why there's a new personal finance app in the market every single month. To budget and represent your finances in a nice app that's beautifully designed, that nobody ever opens after the first download. Why? Because it doesn't matter how good the UI is to show you where you're spending money. The reality is you're freaked out that you're spending too much money.
All right, all you audio fiends and or YouTube fiends tuning into our YouTube channel. In fact, for this episode, you might want to, because we're filming it outside in my backyard. And I actually have my little 4-year-old daughter in my lap for the intro. She saw me and you want to say hi?
Hi.
She's waving. Well, okay, she did say hi there. But that's another reason that you might want to check us out on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, tap that little bell thing. We still don't know what the bell does. Write in some comments and join all the other subscribers for Below the Line on YouTube. And the other benefit for this episode is you get to see my little 4-year-old daughter. And today's episode is with Vance Roush, who's the founder of a company called Overflow. I'm an investor in Overflow, but it's a topic that I never hear on business podcasts, which is around generosity, charitable giving, and how best to do it. Okay, Elle is no longer entertained, so she just left me. But soon Vance will join me and keep me company for the episode. So I got that going for me. And here she comes back.
He's going pee-pee.
Oh, that's all right. Well, that's what dogs do. Good job, Wendell. So without further delay, let's get into it with Vance Roush. This is Below the Line. Live, Vance?
Yes.
Welcome to LA and
Thank
to
you.
my backyard.
Yeah, it's a brilliant spot, man. Right on the beach.
Thank you.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. We're very fortunate. And we just started to film a few episodes outside because
Yep.
the weather is so nice right now.
Yeah.
So and
beautiful.
actually very similar too, up at San Jose also has great weather.
Not bad.
San Francisco, not as
San Jose has better weather
much
than
better.
SF.
Much
Yeah.
better. Okay, so you have such an interesting background as a founder, and which includes, and I remember the first conversation that we ever had, I remember you telling me that you'd already founded a church with thousands of parishioners.
That's right.
And amongst many other things, but do you mind giving listeners the unconventional but a very exceptional background you have as a founder?
Yeah. Well, I started my career in technology, so I started at Google. But simultaneous to that, and probably more notable to what you're talking about, my wife and I co-founded a church alongside an Australian pastor, Adam and Kira Smallcombe. They're our pastors now, called Vive, back in 2012. So church planting story, 2012, 7 people in a living room. And that was just because it was my wife and I, Pastor Adam and Kira, and their 3 kids. 7 people in a living room.
How does someone have the devotion to want to start a church and then also the rebellion to say, all right, we're going to go at this differently?
It wasn't devotion, it was naivety.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what happened was my wife and I, we actually met at a church up in Seattle where we were going to University of Washington. And so I had not been following Jesus or the ways of Jesus pretty much my whole college career. I had this experience with God.
Were you drinking a little bit?
Exactly. That's right.
Okay.
Yep. The drink.
Gambling a little bit? Cursing here and
a little
there?
dice on the streets.
A little dice? Couple curse words?
Curse words.
Living fast and loose. Okay.
See, that's a rebellion right there.
Yeah,
that was
there
a
we go.
rebellious stage.
Yeah.
But I did actually have an experience with God when I was studying abroad in Italy that caused me to want to get back into church. And so the first service.
And did you grow up? So you grew up religious?
I grew up religious. I grew up in a Christian household, but it was more socially,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Because essentially, when I went to college and I had the revelation that I could actually play basketball on Sunday mornings instead of going to church,
Yeah.
I chose basketball.
I had that same revelation. Well, that and sleeping in.
That's it.
It was the powerful combo,
That's
sleeping
it.
in and basketball.
That's it. I was like, this hedonistic life is way better.
Yeah.
Love it. And so I actually pursued that for a few years, and I had this encounter, which basically all the encounter was me committing to God. Okay, I'll check out church again for myself, not for my parents, for myself. First service I walk into, a Wednesday night service, college service, I meet my now wife.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how much God loves me, because I just was obedient once, and
Yeah,
it led
that's
to
quite the ROI on,
it's a great ROI.
on going to church.
So go to church, everybody.
Yeah.
You'll meet your wife, you meet your spouse. But I meet Kim, and we grow a friendship. Literally within a year, we're engaged. Right after we graduate, we get married, and so we grew that relationship. And because we met in the context of a church, we knew that faith was going to be a component of our life and was going to be very important as we built our marriage together. And we both got jobs in the Bay Area, so we ended up going on this journey of trying to find a Christian church to be a part of and to serve at. Very simple. We thought it was going to be easy. After visiting literally 20 different churches all across the Bay Area, we just couldn't find one. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, James, of like, I don't know if I can grow spiritually here. Right?
Really?
Yeah.
It's an interesting way of articulating, so I don't know if I've articulated that way, but I obviously have my other podcast, Yoga for Your Intellect, which is very spiritual and philosophically based. I think maybe I've felt that so much
Yeah.
that I maybe have resorted to, okay, how do I just pluck out pieces
Yeah.
that I can benefit from, because yes, I felt that feeling underserved,
Yeah.
so to speak, from almost any organized service that I've that I've been to. But go on. So yes, I have felt that, but I certainly
I like
never.
your approach though, because I think what I'm saying could be misconstrued of like a consumeristic church shopping, right? Which I don't subscribe to. I do think, like you said, you can pull out something from everything, but one core ingredient that's important for Kim and I is actually vision. Right, and if a church doesn't really have a clear vision of, hey, what are we trying to do together here? What are we trying to accomplish together? It's really difficult to picture ourselves being fully connected in, and that's what we were missing. And so, literally,
I've never even thought about asking about a church. I grew up Catholic, so there is no vision. In fact, it's put your blinders on and don't ask questions. So, what would be like a church's vision that you didn't jive with, and then what was Vive's? This is so interesting. I've never chatted with a pastor and founder. So we're definitely going to get into the merging of these two and the founder path around building what I think is going to be the plumbing for the most generosity the world's ever seen. So that part of the conversation is going to be fascinating in its own right, but I actually want to dial into this whole realm. Like, what is a vision of a church that you heard that you were like, nah, and then what was the vision of Vive that you all started?
Yeah, this was about 10 years ago. So even my understanding of faith and biblical doctrine was very rudimentary compared to the journey we've been on for the last decade. But at that time, because I grew up in the church, I did know through osmosis that Jesus, right, gave us the Great Commission to go and make disciples, right, of all nations, and to baptize people in my ways, essentially, right? So high level, I had this understanding, and that message is pretty clear to me. The method can vary, right? The style can vary, and a lot of times, people subscribe to a style more than things being scripturally based, which I don't really agree with either. But I will
totally
say,
seen that of like, oh, the music's better here.
right,
Wow, the coffee and donut stands are
right,
legit here. I like that.
right.
Yeah.
Which is a very consumer way we think about Christianity, which is funny because Christianity is actually not consumer friendly at all. If you actually read the scripture, it's very confronting. Like
How so? I can imagine a few, but for listeners, what comes to mind when you say
yeah,
that?
you're meant to die with Christ. You follow Jesus, expect trial. You're actually signing up for hardship. There's a lot of churches actually that they'll do a call to Jesus, like, hey, this is the moment where you can follow Jesus. And they make it so easy. Okay, nobody look around, just slip your hand up really quick and then put it down, and then you're good. You're following Jesus now. Actually, I don't think so. We should actually put barricades and obstacles on the way to the altar. Like, you got to really want it.
Interesting.
You got to really like want to follow this thing because it's a very sacrificial life. Like, we need to share in the suffering of Jesus. That is a very challenging thing.
Well, and for listeners that just want the tech and founder side, that's we will get to that. But this is obviously it's a topic that I love. And if you're hearing background noises, that is the good / maybe bad choice of filming outside that it comes with some prices, so apologies.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be a short-lived experiment. But the on that idea of you're called to follow in the death of Christ, that's one of the things that is so interesting and I think does not have too much volume around is Jesus, as far as I understand it, I remember an author, Richard Rohr, saying that Jesus says to worship him once in the Gospels, worship him once. He says to follow me 14 times.
Right?
So he's saying, follow me.
Follow me.
Like not, and it's not even worship him, it's worship the Father, is what he's like referencing. And so he's saying, follow me, not like get on your knees and pray to me, but but follow me where I'm going. And
we got things to do.
And I'm going to tell you exactly where I'm going when he prophesies his own death.
Exactly.
That's that is something that is so counter to the Christianity that I grew up in.
Yeah.
In Texas, where it was like cling to this to get away from discomfort.
Well, yeah, the religion that a lot of people subscribe to, and I was exposed to growing up as well, was let me give you something to absolve your guilt. So even in Catholicism, right, I have formulas for that bad feeling that you have that feels unrighteous because I drank or I cursed. So you gotta say a couple Hail Marys and right. But Jesus didn't say follow this formula. He said follow me.
Right.
Right. And it's a very actually not pleasant thing. Even Paul, one of the most prolific writers for the New Testament in the Gospel, he says, I'm a slave to Christ. Are we talking about slavery now? No, I thought this was
for heaven. I was going to get abundance.
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom, right.
Okay. There's not really, so Paul describes it as, well, if you don't want to be a slave to Christ, you're basically going to be a slave to something else. So might as well just enslave yourself, submit. Here's another, let me not use the word slavery. Here's another nasty word people don't like, submission. Because, my pastor describes it as, we watch too much WWE growing up. And so we think that submission is like, this submission hold.
Yeah.
That now we have to be less than. It's a cowering.
Yeah.
That's not what biblical submission is. Submission is just coming under. If this was raining right now and I had an umbrella and you came under, you're not cowering under the umbrella. You can stand tall and be whoever you want to be and be all that you can be, right? You're just coming under the covering of the umbrella. That's being submitted to the umbrella. So it is nuanced, but ultimately this idea that I'm enslaving myself, I'm submitting myself, I'm going to follow this way is the antithesis of a consumer-friendly message. Because the message of society today is, I'm going to follow what I feel. My truth.
That is the worst phrase. That is the worst phrase that modern humanity has come up with.
It's the phrase of the day.
My truth.
It's a phrase. So
that is literally, you cannot get further away from
the truth.
The truth, than to give people this blanket phrase to say whatever they want without any. It stops the conversation. The truth is actually the only thing that can be said by any number of people, any number of times, and it remains true.
The truth is the truth.
Right.
Yeah, and so when we were visiting these churches, it wasn't not resonating because of a consumeristic nature, because we didn't like the donuts or we didn't like the music. It was, where's the vision? And so, what I believe divinely, we were connected with these pastors, Adam and Kira. They were in Sydney, Australia at the time, and he actually DM'd me on Twitter. He said, heard about you guys.
How did he hear it? Were you
So one of the churches that we visited, they actually shared our contact info with him because they knew it was a church we visited in San Francisco, but they knew that we lived in San Jose, and Adam and Kira, they were going to plant in the Silicon Valley. Oh. And so they shared our info. I think that's probably like a data breach, by the way.
Yeah.
They shared our info with them, and then so he DM'd me. Heard about you guys, heard you're looking for a church. We feel called from God to start a church in the Silicon Valley. Would love to meet. And so, I call Twitter now the Holy Dove. I know that's not the Holy Dove for a lot of people.
I cannot stand it, but yes,
exactly.
It has its moments.
It created this connection, and so I was like, yeah, let's meet. Sounds cool. Are you in the Silicon Valley or in the Bay Area right now? No, we're in Sydney. We can fly next week to meet you guys. And so they flew over. We toured them around Google. That's where I was working at the time. Toured them around Stanford. Right, it's a very Bay Area thing to do.
Yeah.
And then we ended up, after about 3 hours of hanging out, at a Thai restaurant where they proceeded to give us a vision for a church that was going to be at the center of the Silicon Valley. And it was kind of a 10-minute pitch, I guess, of what the church could be in the Silicon Valley, of people working at Facebook, Apple, Tesla. If you think about it, the people in the Silicon Valley are kind of shaping the future.
Oh yeah, they're moving the gears that are certainly shaping.
Right? And so the thought was, and the idea was, if we can actually create a space where people can maybe be exposed to the teachings of Jesus, and people start following and subscribing to that, what type of influence could we have similar to what Silicon Valley exports in technology? What it could be known actually for the ways of Jesus as well. And so it was a lot more elaborate than that, but in that, I didn't just catch a vision, I caught a spirit, right? And I knew that, okay, there's definitely something on what they're talking about that is attractional to Kim and I. And literally after a 10-minute vision pitch, just knowing them 3 hours, I'm just eating some pad thai, they go, join us. So out of pure naivety, James, I said, sure. I'm 21 years old. I don't know
21.
I don't know anything.
Wow.
I don't know anything about what church planting is, what starting a church is. I grew up in a church, but I went to go to the Silicon Valley to work at Google. And I'm sitting across from these Aussies talking about this church in the Silicon Valley that's going to change the globe. And I felt connected to it. But because I didn't know anything about what that meant, I said yes. And so it wasn't this rebellion, it wasn't this even great idea that I had. It was, I just didn't know enough to say no. And I think if we connected a little bit to entrepreneurship, I think a lot of entrepreneurs would probably connect to that, especially first-time founders. It's like, okay, everything that I know now, I don't know if I would actually have done it.
And the first-time founders, and myself included, we often start things for the dumbest reasons.
The dumbest reasons.
And just because it's like, well, that sounds a lot easier and a lot better. and it ends up being a lot harder and better, maybe through what you learn, but certainly not through any of the senses.
Yeah.
So much harder.
And it was number one because it had the ingredients of vision that we felt called to.
Was there any ego of like, oh, that would be kind of cool to be?
100%.
Really?
Well, that going into the secondary reasons, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the more superficial reasons. Oh, these pastors pretty young. They are fashionable, good-looking couple. This is totally going to have product market fit in the Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
They have awesome Aussie accents. Just imagine reading the Bible on Sunday with the Aussie accent, way better.
Yeah, right.
Right? So there's a lot of like tangential things around it, which was like, I think this is going to be cool. I think this is not only going to be this very kind of like, all right, die for the cause. I think this is actually being a lot of fun.
Yeah. Personally beneficial
and
as much as
100%.
Communally.
What we said from the very beginning was, if we come to a Sunday, actually Pastor Adam told me that, if we come to a Sunday and we're not having fun, we're closing this thing down. We're going to stop coming.
How many people attend? 5
So
or
now 4,000.
Okay, so there has to have been some Sundays that are, especially you actually hear about it often of pastors that get burned out.
Oh yeah.
It seems like it's, I don't know, really
why?
commonplace.
You know why? I think it happens in business, it happens in church, anything that you're starting. Eventually people get burned out because they start building something that they don't even like anymore.
And has
almost
really?
happened to us, right?
Yeah.
Because there was, when you're starting out anything, you're kind of in a desperate mode. When you're starting a church, the context is, when you're starting a business, it's about dollars, right? How can I raise some money so I can actually start focusing on this? In the church world, it's people. That's the currency. Because preaching to 3 people in the seat is not that fun, right? And so in the early days, you're desperate for people. And so what happens is people come and they like some elements of the church, and it's encouraging because they're like, oh, we love the message, or oh, we love the welcome experience, or we loved the barbecue after, or we love like that it's, homey and intimate and things like that. But then there's elements they don't like, and they'll start critiquing and start giving feedback. And the proclivity is that, oh, we need to listen to this feedback. Actually, you know what we should do? We should put feedback forms on the seats so that we can like iterate.
Get as much as possible.
And so that we can cater. And that's when it happens, right? You start catering and listening to all the feedback, and you start creating a community that you don't even like anymore. Maybe they like, but personally you don't like. So we honestly probably could have gotten to 5,000 people faster as a church. We've been going for 10 years. We probably could have got to 5,000 people faster if we listened to more feedback, or if we modified our church in a way that took all those critiques. But there was a point in which we were like, you know what? If we get to all these people and we look behind us and we don't even enjoy the community that we built, why? That's where I think people get burnt out. It can happen in companies, right? That investor, or
it's a bunch of little compromises.
That customer, a lot of little compromises, and all of a sudden, the purity of why you got into the first place is completely lost. That's why I think some of the most compelling businesses that I'm drawn to has a deeper purpose or a deeper first principle that is built on more than just the capitalistic nature of our system, right? And so I think even some of the most enduring brands that we know are built on first principle truths. Apple is built on simplicity. Amazon is built on the truth that people want things convenient and cheap.
Right.
So there's like certain like first principle truths that I think are transcendent, which, the company I'm building now, Overflow, is built on that first principle truth of giving, which I think people are wired to do.
Can you tell, and I'm so thankful that I get to be a part of of what you're building with Overflow.
Yeah.
As an investor, and could you tell listeners, could you give me an overview of what generosity looks like today, 2022, and maybe it can be localized to the U.S., but what does giving look like? And then I'd love, you've touched on it in various conversations we had in the past, but I would love for you to give, maybe give the ideal scenario. This is what it looks like today, and it's pretty broken, hobbled, it's duct tape, suboptimal, but then also I would love to hear, like, what does the world look like in terms of generosity in 20 years, or what does the ideal look like? But let's start with what does it look like today?
Yeah. So it's interesting. If we take a macro view really quick of the giving economy, I guess, $450 billion are donated every single year to 501c3 organizations in the U.S. alone.
Which is the tax registration for tax exemption for nonprofits.
Exactly. Which that is probably how we can best calculate generosity right now, even though generosity is more than just giving to a 501c3, right? Giving can be beyond that, but let's just create it in this economic box for a second, right? So $450 billion donated every single year. Interestingly, we're talking a lot about religion right now. It's relevant because over 30% of that 450 billion is actually to churches, largely Christian churches. So the second most important category is education, and that's at 13%.
Okay,
There's
so
no other category even close.
150 billion to churches.
Exactly.
And then 13%, so that'd be around 50 billion given to education organizations.
So more than, so the church is more than double in terms of categorically in their generosity than any other category, right? Why is that? Okay. Because I would say that there's two types of generosity. One is an altruism. There's actually a whole movement called effective altruism. I think this is very noble. I think it's this understanding that it is just my responsibility to give, right? That, I have some things to give and there's some problems in the world. Let me figure out where my dollar will have the most bang for its buck and find those organizations that are being effective with finances, and let me give to that, right? And so a lot of America gives in that way. It's called actually philanthropy, okay? It's a very large category. That's a lot of what the $450 billion
What was the other term?
encompasses.
Effective altruism?
Effective
Why
altruism.
is that? How is that different from altruism? Just looking for the most effective use of the dollar?
Exactly. So it's altruism, but with kind of a business mindset of where is the best ROI. So what it really comes down to is any organization efficiently deploying against poverty is one of the most, there's other diseases too that organizations are tackling that we can eradicate. And that would be one of the most effective ways to deploy philanthropy or to be altruistic with your money.
How does the average person go about choosing where to donate their money if they have that desire?
Yeah, so there's organizations literally called effective altruism that have algorithms and models and white papers and studies that you can go on a huge rabbit hole of just fully understanding this. And they rank the organizations and the 501c3s that are tackling some of these problems, right?
How does the average person go about it though?
Yeah, so
is it typically church or just finger in the air?
Well, the whole other component of giving, right, is emotionally based, right? So this is still in the altruistic kind of my responsibility to give bucket that I have for giving, where it's Black Lives Matter, COVID-19, natural disaster, So you see
War in Ukraine.
Ukraine, another great example, right? Where you see an event or you see a commercial or you see a Twitter thread on something that causes a emotional response. And people then give, right? That's why GoFundMe is such a iconic brand now, because people love to give together and people love to rally around the cause of the day. So this is all good. I think that this bucket of generosity is fantastic. Interestingly though, the biggest bucket of generosity, the church, is not cause-based. And it's not even from the standpoint of, oh, I think it's my responsibility to give. It actually comes from a biblical truth called the tithe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is that my responsibility to give bucket is assuming that all of these resources that I have, I earned and is mine. The biblical foundation for generosity and giving is none of what I have is actually mine. So I want to honor God in everything that He's blessed me with, and I want to give back to Him what's actually rightfully His anyways. That's actually what the tithe is. A lot of people think that the tithe, and the way it's expressed in a lot of different churches, I totally can have empathy for people's maybe misunderstanding of the tithe. A lot of people think that the tithe is a Christian tax, or I got to pay my membership fees.
Right. I'm getting services. Got to. I owe it. I owe them something, right? Yep.
That's not the foundation at all. The foundation of the tithe actually comes from an Old Testament story where Abraham won a battle, and when you won a battle in antiquity, you would reap all the spoils from the battle. He took a tithe, a tenth. Tithe literally means tenth. And he basically said, God, you won the victory for me. This is why I won the victory, because of you. I'm going to honor you with a tenth of all these spoils.
You only gave him a 10?
Exactly, right? And so
you won because of him, only gave him a 10?
Exactly. And even in the Bible, in Deuteronomy, when it says to bring your tithes into the storehouse, back in the day, you actually wouldn't bring money. You would bring your crops, and you would bring food. And in Deuteronomy, it says, bring all of the tithes into the altar and eat with me. So it's not that the church needs your money, but you need an opportunity to give. You need an opportunity to actually exercise generosity and recognition of maybe where that might have come from, right? And God's saying in Deuteronomy, hey, I want you to actually eat the tithe with me in my temple, in my place of worship. We're saying, hey, let's do it together. I don't need it. Like you can have it, just have it in my presence. Let's do it together, right? And so I think where a lot of philanthropy, 501c3 organizations, people that have a cause get it twisted sometimes when they're fundraising is the mentality is I'm like I need your money so that we can do all these things. No. You've been doing those things before that money came in. You don't need their money. They need an opportunity to give it, because money is currently a master over them, right? And that's the whole institution of Christian giving, is God has set up this thing called the tithe, and there's a lot of other ways to be generous biblically, but this tithe, which represents over 30% of all giving in America, the most important category of giving in America today, is saying, if you can't even give 10%, like you said, 10%, you only gave him 10%. If you can't even give 10%, money is definitely a master over you, right? But it's a terrible master. It's a much better servant. If you can tell it where to go. How do I know people are enslaved to money? Because all of my friends, they make $100 and they spend 110.
Right.
Right? That's why there's a new personal finance app in the market every single month. to budget and represent your finances in a nice app that's beautifully designed that nobody ever opens after the first download. Why? Because it doesn't matter how good the UI is to show you where you're spending money. The reality is you're freaked out that you're spending too much money because you don't actually know how to appropriate money.
That little ding is the sound of cold, hard, digital, invisible cash going right into your pocket. And by pocket, I mean your digital Shopify account that might be on your phone in your pocket. At least that's the case for us in Magic Mind. Shopify allows you to go from first sale to full scale, and it has for us. Magic Mind has one full-time employee, and we've gotten to 5 million in annualized sales using Shopify. Me, William, our amazing GM, and Shopify. It is the no-brainer for any e-commerce stack that you've ever thought of. If you're selling online and you're running into issues left and right, Shopify is a solution. If you're thinking of selling online, it is the dream scenario of being able to get your first sale, scale to millions in sales. And we haven't done this yet, but when we do move into physical retail, when we move into physical shops, start building our own, you can actually go from online with Shopify to offline with Shopify, and everything is in beautiful little dashboard on your phone. I love checking it. You can check it, as you're going to sleep. You just open it up and see your exact sales for the day. You even see tips on how to improve conversion rates, improve your store. Shopify is literally, when I say it's the dream, I mean it. It is the dream, and we've got a special hookup for listeners, so wait for that in a sec. You can reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. This is one of my favorite parts about Shopify is it has this ecosystem of thousands of third-party apps, developers and teams that are building awesome features for the Shopify ecosystem. So you're getting way more than just Shopify. You're getting thousands of applications built to refine the customer experience for all of your customers. We use probably 8 or 9 of these different apps that Shopify doesn't even build, but it's teams building for the Shopify ecosystem. And were we on a different platform, we just wouldn't have access to these thousands of third-party applications to make MagicMind.com so powerful. You gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting on conversion rates, profit margins, and beyond. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. This is possibility powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/below-the-line, all lowercase, for a 14-day free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. And this is a unique offer for Below the Line. You're going to get something special when you sign up with that /below-the-line. So make sure to enter that. It is not offered to everybody. So go to shopify.com/below-the-line, all lowercase. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/below-the-line, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/below-the-line. Today's episode is brought to you by Magic Mind. You've heard it on the podcast before. It is my favorite thing about the morning is when I get to take my Magic Mind, 12 magical ingredients that get you into flow state. It is, as Forbes put it, Silicon Valley's new morning elixir. For so many reasons, it is, but for me, I'll just say the fact that I get dialed in, not amped up like an energy drink, but dialed into my work so quickly. It is basically just motivation, focus, energy, and de-stressing in a bottle. It's really, truly magical. Go to magicmind.co, enter promo code BTL for Below the Line, BTL, to get 20% off of your first order and see if it works for you. You can literally tweet at Magic Mind, say whatever you didn't like about it, and you get a free refund. It is so easy to get a refund if you do not dig it. So there's really no reason to not try it and see if it is magical for you. You can go to magicmind.co/love just to see all of the public praise. Pete Holmes, the famous comedian, he doesn't stop tweeting about how magical Magic Mind is for him. So you'll probably see that if you look it up on Twitter. But if you've never tried it,
Go order it. It's promo code BTL for Below the Line to get 20% off. And again, you get a free it's easy refund if you don't dig it. magicmind.co and start making magic.
Right.
One of the most compelling arguments I've heard for generosity, in addition to the fact that it's like you're touching on with the church atmosphere, it is, you get into a spiritual side of things, and there is that argument. There's also, which is a valid, but I have to admit, the one that's maybe been the most influential for me is hearing about, and this is more than just donations, generosity and all kinds. I was hearing from a doctor tell me about the release of oxytocin when we give. And when you give, have you heard about this? It's the neurochemical that basically makes you feel safe.
Yes.
The more you give, the more
financially too.
Yeah,
not even just of your time, not volunteering, giving money.
Really? Yeah, so it releases the neurochemical that tells you you're safe, and oxytocin. And it's released when you give a hug, when you receive a hug, but even more when you give a hug. And then the other, the corollary, a counter, is vasopressin. If I were to put $1 here on the table, or the last piece of cake in front of us, when I take it, if I remove something from the community or from two people, then my body will release vasopressin, which is the neurochemical of fear.
Wow.
And so when we know, I just put Vance without that cake, that dollar, that whatever donut that I've just removed. I obviously got that donut, but I've just put Vance in a state of withoutness.
Yes.
And my body will start to release
vasopressin,
which will make me feel fearful. And so that you cut yourself twice, or you miss out on this swing that's twofold of give the donut, you're going to feel safer, and you're not going to have an influx of feeling fearful. Donate whatever you can to an organization you care about.
There you go.
To a cause you care about, for that same reason. When you think about doing it and you decide, no, I'm not going to. There is some biological, seems to be some biological connection.
What you're saying is so important, because effective altruism is actually very attractive, and I'm for it. I actually think that should be table stakes. Hopefully we trust the organizations that we're giving to, and hopefully they're run in a way that should be table stakes, right? And there should be actually a bigger market-based system for these organizations, right, to be able to have the right to exist and deploy our dollars towards good, right? The limiting factor, though, here is to what you're saying. Let's just say effective altruism said, okay, let's all give to clean water initiatives today because that is the best bang for our buck. And we actually have an opportunity to get everybody in the world clean water, right? And actually, let me just say, on a spiritual side, I prayed to God as well, and he snapped his finger, and everybody had clean water today. What happens in 10 years? People have dirty water again.
Really?
Because the root problem was actually greed, right? Let's take food insecurity. It's not a resource problem. People not having food is not a resource problem. We actually throw away enough food in America alone to feed the whole world twice.
Really?
Yeah. It's not a resource. There is abundance, right? And so, okay, let's fix resource allocation, but a lot of the reasons why people don't have food is because of corruption, is because of greed, right? And so what you're saying is actually a deeper first principle truth that people need to catch, is that yes, let's solve problems, right? Let's allocate resources, but you just starting to give, even just the act of giving, is already rewiring your brain, is releasing dopamines, is transforming your heart is deepening your empathy. So all of a sudden, we can solve the practical problems of today, but we solve the eternal problems of tomorrow and 10 years and generationally if we actually transform the heart, right? Because giving people don't greed and greedy people don't give.
There's got to be some people in the middle.
Maybe.
I feel like that's where even a lot of generous people that I know externally also have pretty damn huge egos. But which I do want to cover with you, which is how do you view ego and giving, and egoistic giving, anonymous giving? What is someone that sits at the intersection of all of this? How do you view it?
I would love more ego in giving.
How so? Tell me more.
Because there's a lot of ego in everything else. Forbes releases a list every year, the top people based on net worth. Okay, which is literally the antithesis of giving.
Yeah, it disincentivizes them to give anything away.
Right, and so people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett can remain on that list but seem philanthropic, and this is not shade on them, I don't know them personally, but just high level macro, right, is they can seem philanthropic because they can say, oh, I'm pledging my riches and I'll give it when I die. Why? So I can still stay on the list.
Right.
The list still matters, right?
Right?
And I'm not saying it exactly matters for them, I'm just using them as examples. But this list...
But you know what will hurt their prospects on that list? Jeff Bezos getting divorced. That'll make you lose a lot more than a couple bill here and there. Donations.
Exactly.
But yeah, keep going. So what would ego and giving look like? And it seems like obviously, especially coming from the founder of a church, it seems non-virtuous, and yet if you care about giving, if you care about
I think a lot of people,
solution, maybe it's more effective.
As you probably might agree, to some level, basically virtue signal though. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
I think people like to think that they're virtuous, but I don't know, like let's be real, right? A lot of our actions derive from our ego, right? There was a famous coach that I heard from recently, and he actually tells his athletes that, no, don't lose your ego. That's part of your killer instinct. That's what makes you a great athlete, actually. There is something very human about understanding your ego. And maybe another word around this atmosphere is ambition, right? And so ambition can come off arrogant, but I like to think that how can we actually harness that ambition and just put it on mission, right? But the gateway is ego. So when I say, oh, I'd love to see a lot more ego in giving, I would love a lot more people to lead the charge to make giving cool.
A Forbes list for giving.
That'd be amazing. Like if actually would be better by Forbes is if they rejig that list to not be based on net worth, because that incentivizes people to keep.
Right.
But let's base it on how much you made all time. That doesn't hurt me. I'm a positive sum-thinger.
Yeah.
Just because you made all that money doesn't mean that's why I don't make all that money.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that's cool. Let's celebrate that. Wow. You played the capitalistic game really, really well. Well done. So Forbes list on how much you made, but then a secondary Forbes list on how much you gave. That's cool. Now we have two lists that don't actually disincentivize giving. It actually is the opposite. It incentivizes being generous. So that's cool. I also, draw this corollary with AngelList. You're an angel investor, James. You're actually an angel investor in Overflow. You might have known this more than I do, but all of my friends that have been in the Silicon Valley for a while told me that literally a decade ago, it wasn't super cool to be an angel investor. It wasn't like
That's why they were called angels, because it was literally, it was like burning your money
exactly
to give it to crazy, extremely risky startups.
It wasn't like a flex, right? But something happened. Maybe it was because of AngelList a little bit, that angel investing had signal. Actually, some parties you get invited to now because you're an angel investor. Actually, if you go to somebody's Twitter bio, it's like angel.co/their name, right? So all of a sudden, angel investing and what I angel invested into is an extension of my identity. Angel investing is now cool. Angel investing now has signal. Now, actually, why AngelList is such a big company is because there's so many more angel investors that are getting involved, even though the sentiment of it being a place where you just burn money has probably some still merit to it, right? But because there's cachet, because there's signal, more people now flock to it. If angel investing is an extension of your identity to some people, I would actually argue not what you invest in, but what you give to is a better representation of your identity, right? And so if we had an angel list for philanthropy or for giving, and I had a portfolio of all the organizations that I'm a part of and that I've given to, and that was actually underwritten by the blockchain or verified by a platform, then I actually have a culture and a community that incentivizes me to be generous and me to give. And maybe that's not virtuous, but it's a gateway.
Yeah.
If we can have more gateway drugs for generosity, what we said about you releasing money in it, releasing oxytocin and dopamine, I just believe that if people just get exposed to it,
Right.
they'll then start doing it eventually, maybe down the line, maybe for more virtuous or altruistic reasons.
Can you walk listeners through the value prop of Overflow?
Yeah.
And just touch on the inefficiency of a lot of giving.
Yeah.
Or at least how it could be done most efficiently.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first heard the value prop of Overflow, it never even crossed my mind
Yeah.
how much more efficiently I could be giving.
That's right.
Our family could be giving.
That's right. Yeah, so this all comes full circle because we're building the church, right? I'm, continuing my tech career. Fast forward to 2019, we have members. They know me as the treasurer on the board now of the church. Vance, how do I love what Vive is doing. I want to be a part. I want to give, but I want to give in stock. I work at Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, right? Or even the construction worker at my church came up to me, hey, I've been in this Vanguard ETF for 10 years and I'm doing really well. Can I give from that, right? At the time, literally, I didn't know how to receive those assets. I went to Fidelity, started a brokerage account. That was painful, by the way. Finally got the information, sent it to all these members, and then didn't see anybody give stock. And I was like, that's weird. Everybody said they wanted to, but nobody's actually doing it.
And what's the reason to give stock?
So the number one reason why you would want to give stock over cash is because of the capital gains tax implication. So if you actually realize those gains, let's say you have $100,000 of gains in Tesla, right? And if you realize that based on your tax situation, you actually would only see maybe 60, 70,000 of that because of capital gains tax. But if you give it directly, you can
donate the actual stock itself.
Exactly. Donate the actual stock itself. You give the full fair market value, so you can take the full 100,000 as a charitable tax deduction. And then when the 501c3 organization, church, private school, university, charitable organization, when they liquidate it, they get the full 100,000 as well because they're a 501c3 tax exempt organization. It is a win-win situation, right?
Right. They would get $30,000 to $40,000 less.
Exactly. If there was a liquidation and then a give. Also, here's the kicker. If you were going to give cash anyways, the cash now you have free on hand, the $100,000 you have free on hand, you can now rebuy back your position in Tesla at the new cost basis, and you just wiped out all of those gains.
Oh, wow.
So now you've rebalanced.
Didn't know about that.
Exactly. Now you've rebalanced your portfolio. So I don't know if that was the reason why these original members wanted to give stock. I just think that a lot of the reason people do it is because, you know, in my checking account, I'm limited in what I can give. But if I'm early Airbnb, if I'm early Stripe now, right? If I'm early DoorDash and things like that, I actually have a lot more wealth in my stock portfolio, and I can be more generous with that. But because of the friction of what you need to do to actually transfer the stock to the 501c3 organization, people don't do it. And that's what I saw. I literally provided this fidelity information to all these donors that they wanted to give in this way, and then didn't see anything. And after I talked to a couple of members, I realized it was because they needed to download a form, physically fill it out, and then fax it in.
Fax?
Still today.
Wow.
If you want to transfer stock, a lot of brokerages still require you to fax in a form.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so keep going.
And so basically because of that, we built the first completely online way to transfer stock. I released it to my church. I sent an email to 1,000 active recurring donors. And I said, hey, it's very tax advantageous to give in this way. And you can do it completely online. Sent that out. 32 people responded. We raised $1.1 million in 3 days.
Wow. Okay, in 3 days. So it was obviously a lot of pent up demand to
A lot of pent up
donate.
demand, and my conviction was, oh wow, actually it's true. If you just take a little bit of friction away, you can unlock unprecedented amounts of generosity. So that was the origin story, but really the vision now of Overflow is to build the infrastructure that makes generosity frictionless across every major non-cash asset. So we started with stocks because of that origin story, but we do crypto now. We're doing vehicles, wine collectibles,
Nice.
art.
Wow.
Basically any asset that has value, you should be able to give.
Yeah. I don't know if I missed that in the investor updates, but I didn't know you're doing all of those asset
Yeah.
classes now.
This episode is also brought to you by ChargeBee. Imagine this. You're launching your subscription product and you need to invoice your first few customers. You integrate with a payment gateway, write some code to support recurring billing, and you start charging things up. Stuff seems to work until you need to create tax-compliant invoices or set up flexible trials and run pricing experiments. Yikes. Or integrate with more than one gateway. Yoinks. Billing needs grow as business needs grow. Every line of code you write for your billing system contributes to the spaghetti nightmare that will keep you away from your core product. Don't do that. ChargeBee is here to help. We replace in-house billing systems and spreadsheets by giving teams the ability to set up subscription plans and trials, run pricing experiments at scale, analyze accurate subscription analytics, accept multiple payment methods, and much, much more right out of the box. ChargeBee works with global payment gateways like Stripe, Braintree, PayPal, everybody, and integrates with essential tools like HubSpot, Baremetrics, Xero, QuickBooks, Salesforce, and much more. ChargeBee, ChargeBee, ChargeBee. The journey to the first million is often the hardest. To help you get there faster, we're offering free access to ChargeBee's Rise plan. This offer is valid until you hit your first $1 million in revenue. This is a meeting that goes back 2 weeks ago. Me and the CEO, I said, this isn't enough at 500K. This isn't enough at 750. This offer should be valid until customers hit their first million in revenue. And that's how we came to this decision. So you don't have to worry about billing and subscription management in the marathon that is running your business. To avail the services. Love that. I'm going to start using that phrase as often as possible. To avail the services. Sign up for a ChargeBee account with the link in our show notes for chargebee.com/partners. Sign up and enter your details with the coupon code BTL for below the line BTL. And then you complete your sign up within seconds. Super easy. ChargeBee rocks.
That was the exciting vision for Overflow, was
Yeah.
become the plumbing for people to give anything. Anywhere. Yeah,
You should be able to give anything to any organization anywhere in the world at any time. We want to be the Amazon for giving, right? How come I can literally buy a bathtub with one click of the button on Prime and it's at my doorstep the next day, but I have to send in a fax to donate one share of Uber to Charity Water?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You have a used car, and it just would never even cross my mind to donate a used car.
Exactly.
And unless someone made it, one, extremely easy, and two, if it was made very clear financially, like this is the tax, it's going to cost you a few $1,000s.
That's right.
To go through this transaction.
That's
before giving.
Exactly.
All right, have there been moments where your faith has I'm sure there have been many moments where it served you. I actually want to know, has it ever worked against you in a moment, in an interview, in a candidate, in an investor conversation where you're like, oh, this just seemed to kill the vibe?
Yeah. I mean, initially, before I met you, James, I actually pitched 50 others and experienced 50 no's. A lot of rejection, right? And I was actually feeling pretty discouraged.
Dude, I said yes in my head within like 7 minutes, I remember.
You did.
And
you
then
were actually one of the first yeses to the string of a lot of yeses. And so it was either I was starting to pitch differently or it was because of James.
No, I think
Maybe a little
it was
bit
all
both.
you pitching, and it was I just knew how difficult the financial plumbing would be for all types of giving.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the size of the problem, the benefits of giving in these different asset classes that you're talking about. But it was, no, I just remember being like 7 minutes in, being like, man, this guy has everything down. I bet it was 50 no's. It was just so many reps because it was so polished. It was so polished when you pitched. Me, I remember it was one of the most polished pitches I ever got.
I appreciate that.
So it's like Greg Popovich from the Spurs. He says to I think it's around to crack the stone. It takes 1,000. It's the 1,000th swing of the hammer that cracks the stone, but it took all 999 before it to make that possible.
I love that.
So you show up in that last swing, you think, wow, one swing of the hammer. If you're there the whole time, you realize no, it was actually all 999
It was
before
all
it.
of them.
So
Yeah.
it is so polished. But okay, so
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and one thing I did get conviction around was that in those first 50, right, I shied a lot away from my faith. I didn't even mention I was a pastor, right? I didn't mention that a lot of this is actually based on a biblical proverb, Proverbs 11:24. The world of the generous gets larger and larger. I didn't have
world that is generous gets larger.
the world of the generous gets larger and larger. Proverbs 11:24. What we're saying in the study of generosity, in the oxytocin, it's found in ancient scripture as well, is that we're wired to give, essentially. Your world is enlarged, your spirit is enlarged.
It's actually quite simple to imagine evolutionarily of you're going to have a bigger community around you. You're going to be more useful. People are going to want to gravitate towards you.
It's attraction.
And then you have the opposite.
So I didn't have any of my faith and my background in the church, me being a pastor, in my original pitches, because I thought that would be a knock against me. But it was actually the very thing
Especially in Silicon Valley.
especially in the Silicon Valley. Because most of the time when I'm evangelizing to people in the Silicon Valley, the posture is, oh, that's cool for you, but that's not for me, right? Religion is cool for you, but it's not for me. That's why when I talk about religion to people, I say, no, I'm not religious, right? Which is me just saying, I'm more focused on the relationship, right? Don't get stuck on maybe the religion of judgment that maybe you've experienced and have a preconceived notion behind, right? And so I shied away from it, but it was the very thing that actually qualified me, James. And when I started incorporating that into the pitch, into the narrative, into my story, that's when people started saying things like, oh, Vance, you have founder market fit.
Yeah.
Right? Or, oh, this is just so deep of a conviction that we want to back you. And so I've actually seen it as a lot of people, and 95% of my cap table is secular, wouldn't subscribe to maybe a specific religion, definitely not Christianity. But what they do believe in is the tenets of generosity. What they do believe in is my alignment with the market, right? And our team's ability to build this infrastructure and lead the next $450 billion of generosity into the market. If $450 billion is given mainly in cash today, the next 450 is going to be given through stock, crypto, wine, art, vehicles,
Right.
etc.
Right. There's homes, boats. I mean, you can. It
That's right.
sounds kind of silly, but then you work through the tax advantages just to
It's
be
huge.
efficient with it, and it's actually it's going to be, I think, pretty substantial. There just has never been plumbing to make it easy.
That's right.
There's something interesting about that that navigation of 50 pitches where you don't mention your true self,
Yeah.
your truth, speaking your truth.
Yeah, speaking my truth. That's right.
Where you don't speak your truth, where you don't speak, and this is a perfect example, it's not your truth, the truth.
Right.
And then when you start to, I remember that part of the pitch, and I remember feeling like, oh, this is brilliant. This is a founder that, one, has founded something before, two, is sitting with visibility in a problem that no one else sees.
Right.
And I felt like it was, perfect founder market fit. And yet, I have experienced this, and I think so many people listening to this can probably appreciate that so often finding our voice is so difficult.
So hard.
Because we feel like something that is so close to us is also the most vulnerable part of us.
Very vulnerable.
And yet it's like finding your voice is not a search, it's just a brushing away and discovery of what is right there
Yes.
that you're already standing on,
Yes.
not some 1,000-mile search, journey, adventure, bringing anything back. It's just been there the whole time.
Yeah, and what's authentic is attractive, right? And it makes conversations more interesting.
But you know that conceptually, but why do you think you didn't know that in the first, or didn't
Because I
enact
was
it in the
so
first 10,
focused
20,
on the
30?
outcome. So I was trying to curate myself to what I thought an investor wanted to hear. So I was so focused on, okay, these 10 slides. And I know this now in hindsight, like investors don't actually have you present through the slides, right? I'm not like, okay, and here's slide one, and here's slide two. It's actually more of a conversation. Why are you doing this, right? Tell me about the TAM, all those. It's kind of like more riffing. And I didn't know that at the time, though. I was like so focused on, okay, I need to showcase my business model. I need to showcase how much I feel like this is a massive market, underserved. And what got lost into it was the thing that actually made me unique, and the thing that people ultimately believed of why this would actually ultimately be successful. And I didn't know that at the time. So I was so focused on the outcome of what I thought they needed to hear to get that outcome that I abandoned what I knew, that authenticity is attractive. And I've like probably swung maybe too hard the other way now, because like I was just on Packy's podcast recently. In the first 10 minutes we talk about heaven and hell.
Really?
And he's, Packy, I don't think is religious currently, but he just wanted to know because his mind gets warped about eternity. And so, I think the first 50 pitches, Vance, would have tried to like sidestep that right away so that we can get to the business. But then I just sat in it. And a lot of the first part of this podcast was also not about Overflow too. So.
I think that it's supply and demand.
Right.
There's very little supply to a story like yours.
Yeah.
And maybe there's 30% of listeners that would say, oh, I just want to talk about the business. But the other 70%, they aren't getting to hear a founder story of someone building a church. And many of those could easily be secular, but just still interested. I know I'm fascinated in that journey, especially in that honest sharing that you were saying of ego, naivety, the fact that it was just kind of sounded really fun.
Yeah.
Not many church founders would mention
Yeah.
that those are very human motivations. Well, Vance,
Well, I think, I'll just say this to cap it off, James. I think what freaks a lot of people out from religion is they feel like they have to be less than. It's all about self-denial. That's why there's all these rules and rituals in place, because it's about denying of self. What I found is actually it's the way I've become fully human. Is that as I've submitted to these teachings, as I've submitted to these plans in these ways, it's allowed me to experience life fully alive, right? And I don't feel like I'm denying myself at all. I feel like I'm actually becoming more of who I was originally created to be. The same way with generosity, right? I don't think most people, and especially, if you're in the business context, most people think about giving on a daily basis, right? But if it releases a dopamine, shouldn't it be a lot more part of our culture than it is today? If it literally releases oxytocin and puts your body in a state that it's more
feeling safe,
physiologically how it's meant to be, shouldn't it be something? And so I think that it's less about when I'm giving, then I have less. No. When I'm giving, I'm enlarged. Right.
Amen. In one way or other. It sounds like with the fundraising path, it was certainly on the track of when you are being more of yourself.
Yeah.
Then it gets you a lot more
It
from
does.
others.
Wow, that's true.
Well, Vance, where can people find out more about you online and
Yeah.
Overflow?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Vance Roush, VANCE, ROUSH, and then Overflow, overflow.co, overflow.co. You can find everything there.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time today. And I look forward to not only watching what's so cool about Overflows, I'm not only rooting for you as a founder and human, as well as the company, which is, for any investment, it's those two things that are really fun. But this third element of just society.
Yeah.
And I feel strongly, we don't pay especially before something like Venmo, we wouldn't pay our friend back $7, not because of the $7, but it was just the inconvenience.
That's right.
And so I feel like with generosity, it is this subject that feels like a footnote in our lives, because right now it's really inconvenient. It's not very transparent. It seems ineffective to some, and yet I have a feeling over the next 20 years it's going to be one of the most explosive sectors because of companies like Overflow. Taking something that we already established and touched on is biologically written within us, is societally written within human history.
Yeah.
And now we're finally adding some software and some technology.
That's right.
To just, I think, take it to a pretty massive scale. To make 450 billion actually sound really small in 10 years.
Right.
Well, Vance, thank you so much, buddy.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it.
Soon.
So fun.